has been a lot of attention regarding negotiations between Donald Trump and Moscow over the issue of a possible Trump Tower. Now, these negotiations were one of the things that Michael Cohen had lied to in the middle of investigations. And now a new report indicates that Trump actually signed a letter of intent back in 2015 that preceded negotiations for a Trump tower in Moscow. Now, in terms of the legal ramifications of these lies, who knows what the future holds, who knows how this kind of plays a role in the investigations. But what we do know is that Trump's own lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, had lied on air during an interview on ABC about whether or not anyone had signed the letter of intent. Let's take a look.
Did Donald Trump know that Michael Cohen was pursuing the Trump Tower in Moscow into the summer of 2016?
According to the answer that he gave, it would have covered all the way up to November of 2016. He said he had conversations with him about it. The president didn't hide this.
Earlier they had said those conversations stopped in January 2016.
I mean the date, until you actually sit down and answer the questions, and you go back and you look at the papers and you look at the you're not gonna know what happened. That's why lawyers, prepare for those answers.
Rudy Giuliani, almost on a regular basis, accidentally makes the situation worse for Trump, because before that interview, everyone was under the assumption that the negotiations or talks about this Trump Tower lasted until June of 2016. Then you have Giuliani who talks about, November of 2016. Okay, also, he said the following, let's go to graphic 3. In terms of the letter of intent, Giuliani said that was the end of it. It means nothing but an expression of interest that means very little unless it goes to contract, and it never did. And he says, so that's what he had to say. But remember, he claimed that no one even signed the letter of intent, and then Chris Cuomo on CNN basically covered the letter and said this.
Take a look at this. This is the letter of intent for the proposed Trump Tower, Moscow, all right? It is signed by Donald J. Trump. How do I know? Well, because we've been told it was by his lawyer, and it is. Then, this weekend, the president's esteemed lawyer said, quote, it was a real estate project. There was a letter of intent to go forward, but no one signed it. Why are they doing this? This is Donald Trump's signature. It's here. We know this.
So why are they lying about it? I think that's a pretty big question, and Donald Trump himself has lied about his own business interests in Russia. Now, there's a huge issue here because the president of the United States should not have business interests that also serve as conflicts of interest, because if he's making deals behind the scenes with other countries, he's more likely to look out for his own financial interests as opposed to the best interests of the American people. So he was asked about this back in January of 2017, not specifically about the Trump Tower, but about business interests in Russia. And here's what he had to say.
No dealings with Russia. I have no deals in Russia. I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we've stayed away. And I have no loans with Russia. As a real estate developer, I have very, very little debt. I have assets that are, and now people have found out how big the company is. I have very little debt, I have very low debt. But I have no loans with Russia at all. And I thought that was important to put out. I certify that. So I have no deals, I have no loans, and I have no dealings. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict.
So no deals, no loans, and no dealings. That's what he said in January of 2017.
And I'm glad he admitted there on the record, though, that it would be a conflict. But he was perfectly aware of that conflict when he signed this letter of intent. At the time he's running for president, has a chance of winning. In fact, a pretty good chance of winning. I'll show you a video about that in a second that I think will prove my point. But let's break down Giuliani first, because I'm greatly amused by this. First, as Anna and Cuomo pointed out, he said, letter of intent, no one signed it. Then he came out and said, a letter of intent, that's BS. Okay, so line number 1 is no one signed it. Line number 2 is it's BS, entirely BS. None of it is true. Now the letter of intent comes out and it is signed. He says, yeah, but it means nothing but an expression of interest.
Oh, he's a mess. He is a mess.
Yeah.
He is a terrible attorney which I'm actually happy about because I want to know what type of activity the president is involved in. But Trump has, unfortunately for him, hired an incompetent person to represent him.
Yeah, now remember, Michael Cohen's going to prison for 3 years on a couple of charges, but including this one, lying about this Trump Tower deal in Moscow. And that's a serious crime, and he made false statements about it. Now, Giuliani and Trump, I guess, are lucky that they made the false statements not in front of Congress or to the FBI. They just lie on TV nonstop. So that right now, for the moment being, is not a crime. But Anna's right. Why do they keep lying? It's to cover up a deal. But why do you want to cover up the deal? If everything was on the up and up, why do you need to cover it up? You don't need to cover it up at all. You can say, yeah, I have a letter of intent with Russia about a tower that I might get paid on by people connected to the Russian government in the middle of a presidential campaign. Oh, right, that sounds terrible. That's why he kept it secret, but he kept on doing it. So the letter of intent was signed on October 28th of 2015. So you might be thinking, well, look, he's campaigning at that point, if you remember, but did he really even have a chance of winning? I mean, none of the primaries or caucuses had happened yet. That happened in 2016. And you might understandably not remember exactly what his chances were on that day. So if he had no chance at all, as a lot of people believed, earlier on certainly, well, then you can say, hey, look, the guy's doing this on a lark. He's not gonna really win, and he doesn't think he's gonna win. So he's just going on about his life, right? While this running for president is a minor thing. That's why I wanna show you this clip from, as it turns out, the same exact day, October 28th, 2015, here on the Young Turks. Let's watch.
Have talked me into increasing the Trump's chances of winning.
Okay. 10 to 1 on Trump right now.
Oh my
I will
God.
take it.
Finally.
Yeah. He's been saying this all show long for 3 hours.
I'll give you $100. I win $1,000 to you.
Really, you're gonna give me $1,000?
Yes.
Nomination or general election? He wins.
General election. What are we
General
talking
election.
about?
Okay, I'm gonna be a man of my word, and I'm gonna make that bet.
Oops. So, by the way, Jimmy did give $1,000 to Wolfpack and Just Democrats. He's awesome for doing that. And so I bring that up to you, not just to brag, but yes, partly to brag.
It's almost 100% to brag. And all right, I'll be fair, 99.9% to brag, and then the rest for whatever reason you're about to make up right now.
The whole point, you're crazy, dog. Okay, the whole point is, apparently, he had such a good chance of winning that I was willing to lay down a $100 bet on that same exact day that Trump signed the letter of intent. So did he have a real chance of winning? Obviously he did, obviously. Why did I make that bet in the first place? Because he was leading in all the polls. He was leading significantly in all the polls. People just couldn't believe the polls. Whereas I believe in math and data and facts, etc. And I don't blame folks. It seemed unbelievable that a reality show host would win, but it wasn't unbelievable. It was incredibly possible and real at that point. Trump knows that, knows he might win. The Russians know that. You think Russian oligarchs are signing a deal with Trump on a lark? No, here's a guy who has they can read polls too, has a pretty good chance of becoming the next president of the United States, and they sign a letter of intent with him. Now remember, we will funnel a lot of money to you through this project. And so that's why they lied about it over and over again, because it was of course meant to influence him in case he won the presidency, which is exactly what happened.
So right now, I mean, we're kind of guessing as to what was going through Trump's head at this time when he signed the letter of intent. Again, this was pretty early on in the election cycle, October of 2015. But with that said, I think what's more important is to try to figure out why he's lying, and more importantly, what type of financial dealings Trump currently has with Russia, right? If any. And so my hope is that the special counsel is looking into that. Now, the whole issue of collusion is one thing, but collusion by itself, even though it's an issue, I don't think is as much of an issue as Trump looking out for his own financial interests because he has business dealings in another country, right?
But that's in essence the heart of collusion anyway.
Right.
What do the two sides want to get out of colluding? Well, Trump wants to win the election, but more importantly, to make a lot of money. The Russians want to influence the American president. They also wanted to sow chaos, and that Trump was a good way of doing that. But today, by the way, Trump withdrawing forces from Syria, I agree with that overall, but the Russians are super happy about that. Lifting some sanctions on Russian oligarchs today. The Russians are very happy about that. So Trump has talked down NATO, all of our allies, and you know the list. I can go on and on. They didn't want to do the sanctions in the first place. So it looks like the Russians certainly got something, and Trump was set to get, he got the presidency and was set to get money either way. So until he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Will there be consequences? Here we go, right? So other people are going to prison for the same crimes. Will Donald Trump ever be held accountable? And by the way, Democrats, you know, you had this thing about, my politics says for the 2018 elections, we shouldn't talk about impeachment or more important issues. By the way, I agree with that. I'm glad that a lot of you ran on Medicare for all and won on that issue. But now the election's over. So what's your excuse for not going after a president that has broken several different laws?
Interestingly enough, the Attorney General in the state of New York is way more aggressive in investigating and going after Trump on possible criminal charges than any Democrat in Congress right now.
Yeah, the Democrats, I mean, their ability to surrender is limitless. Okay, I know we're gonna get to the budget in a second, okay? So, but the whole idea that they're not pressing anything on all of his crimes. I mean, look, we did the story yesterday about the charity, robbing people that gave you money for a charity. Unbelievable, and everybody can relate to that. They might not be able to understand complicated real estate deals, although it's not that complicated, but it's super easy to understand. Somebody gave money to a charity and the guy used it for his own legal bills to build a fountain in front of his hotel, et cetera, for his kid's Boy Scout entrance fee. So Democrats, let's go. Step up, make these points.
So in today's postgame show, I would like to talk about the impeachment efforts for Bill Clinton and whether or not that actually backfired on Republicans and whether or not that's informing the decisions that congressional Democrats are making today.
And I want to add whether that's relevant to today's politics. So that's a super interesting conversation. Let's do it for the members in the postgame. tyt.com/join and to get memberships, just $4.99 a month for the lowest level, and that allows you to get the postgame and all of our coverage. And this week, if you want, tyt.com/holiday, you get a free week trial.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.